Hey, what's up everybody? This is Eggsngaming and it is October 27th, 2014, and here's my review for The Evil Within. So this game is made by Shinji Mikami, the creator of the Resident Evil franchise, and also the director of other games like Devil May Cry, Resident Evil 4, and Vanquish. It is an intense, grisly, horror-themed action game that, let's just say, does not go light on the blood and gore factor. You will fight to survive against hideous enemies that want nothing more than to violently murder you pretty much all the time. So there it is. Have fun. So in this game you play as Detective Sebastian Castellanos, who at the beginning of the game is sent out to investigate a strange and bizarre mass murder at the local mental hospital. And within the first few minutes of this game, Sebastian is thrust into this scenario where he has no idea what's happening and you as the player don't have any idea what's happening, which is a great driving force for the rest of the game. This isn't one of those games where the story is the main appeal behind it. It's not the best video game story ever. The story basically just exists for you to get from point A to point B and to get some context as to what's going on. But having said that, it's always intriguing and you're always just trying to figure out the whole mystery behind this story. The game's levels put you in so many bizarre locations, bizarre, gory, and really surreal locations. I mean, the word surreal is really the best way to put it. The game has 15 chapters, and every chapter feels unique. It feels distinctly different from the previous one, whether it's the setting, or whether it's the bosses, or whether it's the level layout that you're going through. And what's really cool about this is that the game is a pretty good length. It's about 15 hours long, which I think is pretty good for like a linear action adventure game these days. So one of the first things you'll notice about the presentation of this game is that it always has letterbox, so it always looks widescreen even on a widescreen television. Now, the use of letterbox as a presentation is a really strange one in this day and age, considering that most people that are playing games on HD consoles have HD TVs, so since the display is already widescreen, it's like, what's the point of making it even more widescreen? I'm kind of conflicted about this. I mean, I think that in the slower parts of this game, like when you're sneaking around, when you're walking slowly from one area to the next, it actually lends a very tense, kind of claustrophobic, almost like suffocating atmosphere to what's going on. But when the action heats up, like when you're fighting a bunch of enemies at once, or when you're fighting a tough boss or something like that, you really want to be able to use the whole screen. You really want those letterboxes to go away because you need to be able to see what's going around you at all times. I mean, it's just something that you have to get used to as you play the game. It's not game breaking, but I think it does hold the game back a little bit from being more approachable and more accessible at the start. And the other unfortunate thing about the presentation, and this has to do a lot with the widescreen aspect ratio, is the fact that the camera controls are way too slow. Now, I played this game on PS4, I didn't play it on PC, so for all I know, the PC does have better camera controls, like when it comes to mouse, but I played it on the PS4 version. I went to the options, and I maxed out the camera sensitivity for X-axis and Y-axis, and it was still way too slow. Like, I felt like in the stressful situations of this game, like when you're trying to run away from bosses, or when you're trying to fight a bunch of enemies at the same time, I felt like the camera was way too sluggish. Like, I just wanted to be able to rotate the camera faster than the game was allowing me to. And I feel like this wouldn't be such a big problem if the game didn't have camera acceleration. So imagine that you're holding an Xbox One controller or a PS4 controller, and you use the right thumbstick to move the camera around, and when you're moving it left or right, it starts moving slowly, and then it starts to move faster as you hold down the stick. I just feel like I was struggling with the camera the whole time. Like, I feel like when you combine the unfortunate camera acceleration with the fact that it doesn't turn fast enough to begin with, the game unfortunately is just too hard to control from a camera standpoint. And like I said, this doesn't break the game or anything. I just wish that I could look around my character a lot faster than the game was allowing me to. So one of the things that I love the most about The Evil Within is how it incorporates stealth into gameplay. This is one of those games where you will need to conserve ammo whenever possible. And one of the best ways to do this when you're sneaking around and trying to get past easier enemies is to try to stealth kill them. And the stealth in this game is fairly simple, and I like it for that very reason. You basically just have to wait for enemies to go the other way, then sneak up behind them, and then you can kill them instantly without using any ammunition. Now, one of the other things I loved about this game's slow-paced segments is the fact that the game sets traps in your way that you can trigger if you're not paying close attention. And these are things like bear traps, they're things like tripwires, and they're things like bombs that are in the wall. And what you can actually do is crouch and approach the trap and then engage in this little mini game, and you can disarm the trap, and the game will give you parts which you can use to craft ammunition. And one of the scariest parts of this game is whenever you're trying to disarm a bomb, because you have like 1 second to do it, and you basically just have to press a button at the exact right time. And if you don't press it at the exact right time, you're like, oh shit, and then the bomb blows up in your face and you immediately lose a lot of life, and you're like, yeah, I wish I hadn't done that. The game's arsenal is fairly straightforward. You have access to a handgun, a shotgun, a sniper rifle. Later on, you get a magnum. You don't get these all very soon. You pretty much just start with a pistol and a shotgun in the earlier chapters, and then you get the better weapons later on. The best and most versatile weapon in the game, though, is called the Agony Crossbow. So this crossbow has 5 different bolts that you can use, and they are all very different from each other. You have a standard harpoon bolt, which does pretty good straightforward damage, and it also impales enemies on the walls. You also have things like the shock bolt, which is extremely useful for the whole game. Basically, it'll stun any enemies that get near it when you plant it in the ground or in the wall. Throughout the game, you'll be collecting little green jars of goo, which are basically this game's currency, and you'll periodically enter this upgrade area, which is actually pretty cool and bizarre and weird. And you'll use that to upgrade things. It's very similar to Resident Evil 4 or Dead Space. If you played any one of those games, you'll upgrade the statistics for all of your guns and your max ammo and your sprint speed, or not your sprint speed, but your sprint duration, things like that. One quick piece of advice to anybody who hasn't played this game yet but plans on playing it: invest in your sprint early on, because there are several encounters in this game, specifically in chapters 5 and 10, and if you've played this game you know what I'm talking about, where you will need to sprint for a long time without being winded. This game's boss battles are a definite highlight. I know that some reviewers found them frustrating, but I kind of like them because you were constantly on your toes and you were like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, pretty much the whole time. Usually against these bosses, the bosses cannot be permanently killed until the end of the area that you're in. It's kind of hard to explain, I'm not going to spoil it, but just to let you know that these bosses are highly memorable, and they are, in my opinion, one of the highlights of the game. Now, having said that, some of these bosses have a trial and error component to them where you're supposed to do this exact series of things in order to get through the boss. Not like kill the boss, but like get past the boss. Normally, I wouldn't have a problem with this, but because of the game's limited field of view, like because of the letterbox format, and because of the slow camera movements, I feel like this trial and error just got a little bit out of hand. Like, I feel like when I died in these situations, it wasn't so much because I couldn't figure out what to do, like what the next step to advance the boss was. I felt like it was because I was fighting the game's controls, and the game's controls were just too slow. Now, this only happened once or twice during the game, so it wasn't something that permeated the entire experience. It wasn't something that ruined the game for me. It's just one of the flaws that kind of stuck out, unfortunately. So one of the things I liked about this game's combat is that it doesn't just require straight shooting. You have to be a little bit strategic with how you're approaching the enemies. It's like in Resident Evil 4, how the best way to kill enemies wasn't simply to just shoot them blindly. The best thing was to like shoot them in the head to stun them, and then run up and melee them, or shoot them in the knee and suplex them, or something like that. The best thing to do in this game is to knock an enemy to the ground and then immediately run over the body before it gets back up, and then light the body with a match and burn it, and thereby killing it right there. You can also lure other enemies to walk into that fire and burn them and kill them, and that never stops being satisfying. The Evil Within does feature a New Game Plus mode, so you'll be able to replay any chapter, and you unlock a machine gun, and you unlock a rocket launcher, and you get a lot more points to upgrade your abilities. Now, the machine gun is pretty cool. You just mow down enemies as you would expect with a machine gun, and the rocket launcher is hard to use. Like, it's every time that you equip it, you can't move. Like, you just are in crouched position. So basically, it doesn't help to actually equip it until you have your shot lined up. Now, the machine gun and the rocket launcher don't have infinite ammo, unfortunately. And after I used up all my machine gun ammo, I couldn't find any more machine gun ammo anywhere for the rest of the chapter that I was playing. So it's possible you might find more. I'm not exactly sure, but at least you can always reload your save and then just start from any other chapter with full ammo. But it just seems strange that it doesn't give you infinite ammo. Like, if you think about Resident Evil 4, like when you get the Chicago Typewriter machine gun, you have infinite ammo, and when you unlock the rocket launcher, you have infinite ammo. So it's just kind of strange that they don't have infinite ammo. I mean, you think about playing Resident Evil 4. The first time you play through Resident Evil 4, it's a pretty stressful experience. Your ammo is limited, you're not super strong. And then when you play through New Game Plus on Resident Evil 4, it is so cathartic. Like, you're just mowing down enemies, you're shooting everything with the rocket launcher and basically breezing through the game, and you're like, yeah, suck it. Now, The Evil Within does have a casual difficulty mode, but it is not casual. It is still a pretty good challenge. You'll still run out of ammo fairly frequently if you're not playing smart, and from what I understand, the only real difference is that you get slightly more ammo and you have auto-aim enabled, so it's not that much easier than the regular mode, just to let you know. And for all of you masochists out there are 2 other difficulties that are even harder than the normal one. So yeah, if you want to die constantly, there you go. Have a blast. Now, one of the other things that The Evil Within does very well, in my opinion, just as well as Resident Evil 4, is give you a sense of tension and suspense whenever you're going into a new area. Like, whenever I was going into a new area of this game, I was always crouched, I was always moving slowly, I was always assuming there would be an enemy somewhere, and I was nervous. And this game, it just nails that. Like, you just can't comfortably like jog from one area to the next. You're always like, oh god, what's happening next? Oh god, what's happening next? Now, since this is a horror game, one of the big questions surrounding it is it scary? In my opinion, it's not scary, it's more tense. Like, it's more like Resident Evil 4. I mean, that's really the best way to put it. It puts you in these situations where you have to kill tough enemies and you have to run away and you feel helpless, you feel underpowered, and the game does a very good job of conveying that feel. But it's not like one of those games where you're having like a jump scare every 30 seconds or something like that. It's not like that. Like, it's not a scare fest. Now, as a whole, I enjoyed The Evil Within. I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag, but overall, I liked it a lot. If you're a fan of Resident Evil 4, if you're a fan of Dead Space, if you're a fan of like these like over-the-shoulder, third-person like action horror games, I would give it a shot. But just to let you know, the controls are just a little bit sluggish going into it. I would definitely stick with it, though, because the stealth segments are definitely very good. And I think that Tim Turry of Game Informer said it best in his review, and what he said was that by the time you finish the campaign, you don't feel like so much you've won, you feel like you've survived. Like, that's what this game feels like. It feels like, whew, I can't believe I got through that. That was intense. All right, thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time.